I've been playing Legends of Runeterra for several months now, which is far longer than I expected to. It's based on the League of Legends IP, but the MOBA chaos has been replaced with a tactical card game. Decks hold 40 cards and are usually constructed around champion cards, which tend to be pretty powerful in their stats and mechanics, to the point that when one of these hits the field, it really has the potential to change the course of the match. They're also the highest rarity type, and if you're familiar with other card games, then your alarm bells might have started ringing. If you want a wide variety of decks to play with, then you'll need a wide variety of the rarest cards. And one copy of the card just often isn't enough. You're drawing from 40 cards after all, so you want to increase the chances of drawing your key card as much as you can. For card games following a similar game structure, to have numerous decks, you usually have to play the game a lot or open up your wallet. But the reason I've stuck with Legends of Runeterra is that here, you don't need to do either of those things thanks to how it breaks from traditional monetization practices. From their very inception, collectible card games have always been structured around loot boxes, where buying and opening a booster pack will net you a few random cards. This randomness can make getting the specific cards needed to build a given deck a chore, but for physical games, there's always the second-hand market, and these markets are vital. In almost every card game I know, the most cost-effective way to build a specific deck is to buy single cards from booster packs that somebody else has already opened. If you're playing competitively, then you'll be looking for the most powerful cards, but so will everyone else. Supply and demand then drives the price up. For standard Magic the Gathering, the average price of constructing the top 10 meta decks comes to $282, an exorbitant amount for a single deck, but imagine the cost if you had to solely rely on the randomness of booster packs, which come in at about $4.50 each. For digital card games, however, secondary markets are usually completely absent. There's difficulties in asking a developer to regulate a second-hand trading market within their games, but the cynical side of me can't help but think that profits increase when players are forced to solely rely on booster packs. It's not impossible to implement though. The Pokemon online trading card game currently has one of these second-hand markets, and it works pretty well. But if that was the whole story, these games would struggle to attract any new players, so options that help free-to-play players get involved are almost guaranteed. These are usually daily challenges that reward packs on completion, or currency to buy packs. It depends on your own personal situation, but most players stick with these free-to-play methods of acquiring new cards when they first start out with a new game. I found that when it comes to ranked modes and more competitive play, however, there comes a point when it feels almost impossible to keep up with this style of play alone. I ran into this with Hearthstone. I wasn't a great player, but I managed to climb the ladder to the point that I was encountering meta decks in almost every match. I wasn't invested enough in the game to buy cards, so my off-meta decks were strictly worse than what my opponents had. After stagnating on the ladder and losing through what felt like a paid advantage rather than skill, I eventually lost interest in the game. It's a shame because initially I had a lot of fun, mostly thanks to the many different decks my opponents were playing against me. And that's how a lot of card games seem to work. At the low level of play, there's a wide variety of decks being played as people learn the mechanics of the game and try out whatever spicy homebrew decks they can make with their few available cards. As the level of play starts to increase, you tend to see less variety. Some decks are strictly better than others, so if you have access to all the cards, why would you play anything else? I find there's a point where these two levels of play meet, and it's accompanied by a choice. Invest more of your time or your money, because otherwise you'll never get the cards required to keep up. That time investment option often feels like far too big of an ask for me personally, and so when I was faced with this choice in Hearthstone, I ended up just leaving the game. But Legends of Runeterra was able to completely remove this moment entirely by making card acquisition incredibly easy. Daily and weekly rewards are so abundant that you can end up acquiring at least one of those ultra-rare champion cards each week. Cards can also randomly upgrade to a wildcard version, which means that instead of opening a loot box and receiving a particular card, you instead get the ability to craft any card of that rarity. This makes deck construction so much easier, and the rate at which you get these rewards means that you can craft a meta deck every couple of weeks without having to pay a thing, something I just can't say of any other major digital card game on the market. What's more, the only thing you can buy card-wise is those wildcards. There's no random booster packs or loot boxes. If you want to pay money for a champion card, you buy the right to craft any one you like. It's even better than the second-hand market because each champion is technically priced equally. It's a breath of fresh air in this space, but it's had a somewhat unexpected result that I've been grappling with. With cards being so accessible, everybody has a meta deck. This is great in some ways, but it means that when you play ranked mode, you're almost guaranteed to run into a deck you've already seen countless times. The game is fortunate in that it's had a really healthy meta for most of its life, with there usually being multiple decks considered top tier at any given time. Variety also comes from how people pilot these decks. At different ranks, you'll see wildly different styles of play even within a single deck as people struggle or excel at executing its intended playstyle. But the end result is that ranked climbing feels a bit boring when you constantly run into the same decks over and over again. Everybody has access to all the cards, and everybody wants to win, so everyone ends up playing with the mathematically determined best decks. To circumvent this, I've been playing the unranked normal mode, where people are far less concerned about winning every single game, meaning you usually see a way wider variety of decks being used, and it's been a blast. There's loads of different mechanics in the game, and it's brilliant to get to explore each of these without having to worry about getting immediately stomped on for not playing the meta. Lately, I've been having a ton of fun with a deck constructed around cards that gain a massive stat boost once my deck has less than 15 cards left. This deck doesn't stand a chance in ranked mode because it'd get rushed down long before it reached that condition, which is a similar case for lots of the decks you'll see in this game mode. And when I get bored of that, I can easily craft a brand new one to try based around some other unusual mechanic or strategy. And all this choice made something clear that I hadn't really realised before. It's often far too hard to figure out how fun a card game is until you've invested a significant amount of time and money into it. How many card games conceal how fun they are by how scarce the cards needed to actually experience it are? If you don't have the option to try and explore all the mechanics the game has to offer, how can you really know how much you enjoy the game? Competitive and ranked game modes also tend to conceal elements about the games. Far too many card games feel structured around the rarest cards being the most powerful. In that case, you don't necessarily want new cards because they're intrinsically fun to play with, but because they'll help you win more. The cards I'm hoping to get next in Legends of Runeterra are Pike and other cards focused on the lurk mechanic. Will this deck help me advance up the ladder and win more often? Absolutely not, and it's a brilliant feeling to know that and still want to unlock and play with them. It's made me really wonder how people would feel about other card games if they suddenly had every card unlocked and at their disposal. It would give everyone a more complete understanding of the game and its mechanics, but that could lead to two things. It would either reaffirm their enjoyment of the game, or make them realise that, actually, they have some serious issues with the fundamental game design. Legends of Runeterra throws the door wide open and gives you everything you need to be able to make that decision, which is a breath of fresh air in a game genre that sometimes feels frustrating to be interested in. So if you're a fan of card games and have recognised some of the feelings I've talked about here, then I highly recommend you to try out Legends of Runeterra. I don't think you'll regret it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you around.